Hey, what's up everybody? Coach Kyle here, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for future content, and look back at old videos. There's a ton of them. Today I want to talk about nutrition when it comes to cold weather and or at altitude. And I just came across the position statement from the National Academy of Sports Medicine on winter sports and cold temperature nutrition. And I wanted to touch on a few key points that are the most important things you need to know. And first we'll start with elevation. I didn't know this, but according to the U.S. Olympic Committee, at elevation is actually only at 5,000 feet plus. So I live at 3,600, and I often hear people say that our events are at elevation around here. And yes, they're at a higher elevation than if you're at sea level. But 3,600, 4,000 feet up in the hills isn't that high that it's really going to affect your performance. Super marginal, super marginal, very small performance decrease from coming to 4,000 feet. But the National Academy of Sports Medicine goes on to say that training at altitude results in increased iron needs, increased fluid intake, increased carbohydrate intake. It results in increased resting metabolic rate, so you burn more calories just in general, and a decreased appetite and decreased thirst mechanism. So the problem is that you need more calories, but your thirst and your appetite are decreased. So if you typically, what I recommend is drinking to thirst when running, but at altitude, thirst and hunger may not be adequate for your needs. So it's very important to be mindful of how much you're eating if you're staying at altitude for an extended period of time, or even if you live at altitude, you should kind of be a little more mindful of carb intake especially, and maybe drinking on more of a schedule while running, and being a little more mindful of how much you're drinking just in general during the day, especially after long runs where you either wore a lot of clothing to stay warm, or it was just a hot, warm run. Let's see. So they go on to say, prepare your nutrition and hydration for altitude by regularly consuming fluids. Thirst is not a good indicator of hydration. Paying attention to your urine color is one of the best ways to determine hydration status. Look for regular urination with clear to pale yellow straw colored urine is proper, healthy, normal hydration status. Research shows it can take up to 2 or 3 weeks to fully adapt. You never fully adapt. You just adapt more to performance in altitude. So going out to altitude early for a week or so before the race might help. Visiting altitude might help. Doing some breath exercises from like the Oxygen Advantage book might help. But the most important thing when going to altitude is knowing that there's really nothing you can do about it if you can't do anything about it. If you can't visit a high altitude area, if you can't buy an altitude tent, don't worry about it. Just do your thing. Go do the race. Have fun. When it comes to sports nutrition in cold weather, they say that cold temperature acclimatization is not as well understood as hot and humid, and that is very true. I recently did a video on this, did some research, and that was basically what I found out. Hypothermia is one of the major concerns of cold temperature exposure. This is when your body temp drops below 98.6. With a lower body temperature comes decreased circulation, especially to your legs and your arms. And the reason for that is that the blood kind of stays more internal to keep your organs functioning, warm, etc. Mild hypothermia can decrease performance due to low blood flow to the working muscles. general sports nutrition fuel timing guidelines for pre-workout and training. So this is true for pretty much any type of hard quality running session. So before an easy run, you don't really have to do much. You can go and run a mile, run an hour easy for your easy general training straight out of bed. But for a race, for a long run, kind of having some type of plan is going to result in the best workout or race for you. And I really like these guidelines, and I'm probably gonna, I think I'll use these with my athletes as like a template, because this is good. I like that they break it down like this: 3 hours pre-race, 300 calories, high carbohydrate, moderate protein, small amount of fat. For example, whole grain cereal, fruit, and Greek yogurt. 2 hours pre-event, 200 calories, carbohydrate and protein, for example, an egg and whole grain toast. A couple cups of fluid, maybe some coffee. 1 hour pre-event, 100 calories, carbohydrate like fruit. So this time it's just like a fruit, or maybe a piece of toast with a little bit of butter on it. And then 15-20 minutes pre-event, they suggest half to 1 cup of fluid. Depending on the level of event, if it's a 10K, I would maybe say take a gel or another really like a sports type fuel right before the event. For a 5K, not so much. But for a longer event, I would probably suggest taking in 100 calories like of a gel or something. And then I would suggest taking in 200 or so calories hourly during longer events. They say training beyond 1 hour, your fuel source, and this is training. I consider training a hard run, or we're talking about races as well. 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour, evenly dispersed into 15-minute intervals, with a little bit of fluid each time you take in some carbs. They say sports drinks, gels, blocks, beans. For fluids, if cold temperatures are particularly a concern with your performance, try warm fluids like chicken bone or like veggie stock broth is fantastic. Many ultra runners watching this will probably have had or seen at least like soup stock at aid stations, and there's nothing better during a chilly ultra marathon leg than coming to an aid station with like miso soup at hand. So there's some tips for you for cold weather and or altitude nutrition specifically. So if you have any questions, please be sure to comment below. And as always, you keep running, I'll keep coaching.